Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most subjective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today it is the aftermath of the 49ers 27-24 loss against a very undermanned Rams team. We're going to be talking overall stats, how absolutely unacceptable of a loss this was, coaching mismatches all around, offense very good for the most part, but lacking a killer instinct that I think Brock and Shanahan and a lot of us fans want to see. Special teams, a disaster, 6 years or more ongoing. The defense should have outplayed an undermanned Rams offense for all of the game. It did not happen. We'll talk adjustments that they can make going into their homestand this upcoming weekend, starting with the Patriots. Niners have started slow. That's nothing new, but they don't want to dig a hole, too big of a hole, with the Seahawks being 3-0 now and leading the NFC West. No plus content this week. That may happen, or this episode, it may happen in the next episode or next week. So it's going to be all Niners all the time. So let's get right into it. And guys, this was the most unacceptable loss of the past 5 years. And I think the only loss that bothered me as much as seeing how they looked so disinterested in the second half against the Rams was the 2013 championship game at Seattle. That was the last time that I was throwing things, really pissed off. Like, I get pissed off about losses. We all do. But and some losses, sometimes they feel unavoidable, even if they were to lose on like a last second field goal. The NFC Championship game up in Seattle, that throw to Kaepernick, from Kaepernick to Crabtree, they got batted away. Like they were there to score, and he's forcing the issue to Crabtree like he did the year before in the Super Bowl, when he could have probably just thrown a jump ball to Randy Moss at some point, and him with his pterodactyl arms could have just pulled it down, and the Niners would have had their 6th championship. So that was frustrating from an offensive schematic standpoint. Yesterday was frustrating from the Niners are clearly the better team standpoint. And let's just look at overall stats. Niners outgained the Rams 425 to 296, first downs 25 to 19, had a 7-minute advantage in time of possession. And they did have that one turnover at the end of the half where Brock was strip sacked, but it didn't lead to any Rams points, but it could have potentially taken 3 points off the table for San Francisco. This is the second week in a row where the Niners, well, definitely they outplayed the Rams. You can argue they outplayed the Vikings, right? Last week, Brock goes over 300. They have a 100-yard receiver, a 100-yard running back, a 9.5-minute advantage in time of possession at Minnesota, and lose. And I started saying this is the most unacceptable loss in the past 5 years. It might even be longer than that, definitely during Kyle's reign, at least since they've been good. I mean, there were some bad losses in 2017 and 2018, but as fans, we weren't really expecting that much, right? Last podcast, I thought that this would be a game where the Niners would start slow, that even though the Rams had the worst defense statistically in the league and still do, and are a bottom team in terms of run defense, and they still are, that the Niners would somehow find a way to play down to the Rams level and struggle to run the ball, struggle to get into any sort of rhythm offensively, and that I thought it would be a game that would make us fans uncomfortable for about 2 and 2.5 quarters until the Niners really pulled away. And I still didn't think that they would cover the spread. That's assuming the spread was over 7 points. I had the Niners winning 27-20, but I thought it would be an uncomfortable game until it wasn't. This was the opposite. The Niners looked like world beaters in the first quarter, getting up 14-0. And then every quarter after that became more and more uncomfortable as they kept the Rams, let them hang around. And no matter how undermanned a team you are, you do that against another team or an individual sport like a tennis or a golf. You don't put someone away when you can. Bad things can and did happen at Levi South. Now, and a lot was made about the number of players that both teams were missing. But with what was left, San Francisco had the clear roster and talent advantage on both sides. When you line the teams up across from each other, Niners O, Rams D. Niners D, Rams O. The Niners have the better team and the better players. I don't think anybody is going to dispute that. But I think what we misinterpreted or devalued or didn't think about that much was the coaching disadvantages on both sides. Shanahan overmatches Chris Shula, right? But the way that Sean McVay overmatched Nick Sorensen, that was concerning because he did it with inferior players. He did it with second and third stringers. The Rams were not putting up a ton of yards. I think I looked at the end of the third quarter. The Niners might have been up 10 or just on the verge of going up 10, 24-14. And the Rams had 170 yards of total offense. They finished with a little over 290. So they put a $126 up on the Niners in the fourth quarter. And that's been the MO of their team, right? When they start out well defensively, the Super Bowl, the first half of the Super Bowl, the recent Super Bowl, the first 3+ quarters of the first Super Bowl against the Chiefs, they get gassed. And you can't hold that against the defense. This isn't college where you could rotate in a near infinite number of players to keep people fresh. But the defense is getting tired. The offense should be getting tired too. And I kind of buy that idea of like, well, when the offense is going and you're running the ball and you're exerting your will, you maybe don't feel it as much on offense, whereas it kind of like they suck your soul out. They just break your spirit defensively. And that could maybe add to fatigue or frustration or making business decisions and not making tackles or taking bad angles, whatever it may be. The Niners had that strong start, did not put their foot on the throat, and the coaching mismatch, McVay versus Sorensen, the chasm between them widened in the second half significantly, whereas the chasm between Shanahan and Shula, although a large one, I think shrunk once you got out of the first quarter. Remember, 14 points in the first quarter, 10 points the rest of the way. So it's a lesson, guys, that you can have the better pieces, and the Niners have the better pieces. You could be playing chess, checkers, shoots and ladders, whatever it is. The Niners have the better pieces across the board versus the Rams. But if you're not putting those pieces, those players in the right position, not calling the right plays, making plays at a timely situations of down and distance, it doesn't matter. And it still goes back to me. Now we're going to dive into the offense, special teams. We'll save defense for last because we know it was on them. We'll save that for last. We'll get there. But it goes back to, is the scheme now right? There's too many talented players to question how they could be playing this poorly. And this is not just a Nick Sorensen thing. This is the last third of the season with Steve Wilks. Had a good first half in the Super Bowl. However much we want to chalk up to losing Dre Greenlaw is why the Chiefs came back and Travis Kelce had a huge game. We'll never know. And anybody that's chalking up this slow start defensively looked good against the Jets. Jets, again, I mean, that was a week one. Odd stuff happens week one, right? It's Aaron Rodgers, first time out there with his O-line and his team, and Mike Williams isn't healthy at receiver. Odd stuff happens. And defense, I always say, is generally ahead of offense, even though the Niners defense is not that good. And we're going to go into stats a little bit later in the show. They are not performing regardless of who the coordinator is. Would Steve Wilks have won this game? We're going to say maybe, because I don't know. Would D'Amico Ryans? Maybe. Robert Saleh? Maybe. You can say probably those last two if you want to. I'm not going to hold it against you. But we know it didn't happen with Nick Sorensen. We know this is not an aggressive team. This is a team this year that has blitzed on 6.5% of offensive dropbacks. They're relying on the front four, playing coverage behind it, and it is not working. It hasn't worked in a while. This is a D-line that's living on reputation from the past couple years or several years ago. This is not that team. Although they do have the pieces. We're going to get to, I don't want to jump to the defense. It's so easy to jump to the defense, seeing what we saw yesterday in Los Angeles. But again, there's too many good pieces, too many Pro Bowlers, too many All-Pros, that the sum is not greater than the individual parts. And it should be. When you add Pro Bowler to All-Pro to very good player to very good player, it should make the whole, the unit better, and it's not. And it's actually making it worse. This is not a defense that's playing to a even borderline Pro Bowl level. They're playing to a middle third of the NFL defenses type of level. We're going to get into more defense. Let's talk a little bit of offense. So Brock Purdy is getting some love on social, which is amazing to me because he never gets really love from either Niner fans or not. It doesn't matter what he does because of where he's picked and the weapons he's given and Kyle Shanahan and this, that, and the other thing that a lot of people, or far too many people, detract from Brock. My stance going into this game was this is outside of a Niner blowout. This is a no-win, or would have been a no-win situation for Brock. And even coming out of the game, 292 yards, 3 touchdowns, completed 73% of his passes, added 41 yards on the ground on 10 rushes, kept plays alive with his legs and passing, or just picking up first downs or gaining, 3-4 important yards throughout the game with his feet. All good. High QB rating, high QBR, outplayed Stafford. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. But this was a no-win game for him because everybody that says, well, we got to see how Brock plays without the Avengers. And yes, no Kittle, no Debo, no McCaffrey. That's the big three. That's their big three. But the Rams were down 2 of their top 3 corners. The Rams were missing a starting safety who was on IR. The Rams traded away Ernest Jones to the Titans, so their best pass rusher was gone. So the defense, and Aaron Donald is retired, right? Let's throw that out there. So the Rams were missing 5 pieces, 5 starters from last year. Niners were missing 3. But again, you man them up, you line them up, and they look at each other across the board. Even Sean McVay says, shit, their offense is a lot better than our defense. And they'll say the same thing vice versa when we get there to talk about the defense. Brock had a game, but even so, and I'm not seeing anybody saying it, and I'm not a Brock Purdy apologist. I don't throw cold water on him when he has a good game, but I do feel like this is unless the Niners beat the Rams the way the Cardinals did, 41-10, that people are going to come out and say, yeah, but the Rams were missing a lot of players. No one's saying that. And I'm glad, because Brock's taken a lot of shit. And he's the one that stood up there after the game saying, I could have done better. I'm going to go back and look at the film. What are the plays that I left on the field? I could have given Ronnie Bell a better ball there when he beat his man. And it was a little bit underthrown, but it was underthrown. That was good. So Bell came back for it, jumped up, and the ball goes off his face mask. That was drop number 2 that he had, because he had one on an in route earlier in the game that, he heard the footsteps and made a business decision. If you're going to make a business decision, catch the ball, then maybe duck, catch it and just avoid the hit. That could be another way of making a business decision. But listen, Brock performed with who he had and didn't have, going up against who the Rams had and didn't have. Jennings, 11 for 175 and 3 touchdowns. Phenomenal game. He got the start at receiver. I thought it would have been Chris Conley, so I was wrong on that. And good for Juwan Jennings, a self-made athlete, a self-made player, right? 7th round pick out of Tennessee on the practice squad the first year. Gets a little bit more playing time, gets a nice contract, and had one of the biggest 49er receiving games in recent memory. Brandon Ayuk's taken a lot of flack, rightfully so, for some of the drops. 5 for 48. He was targeted 10 times. And Brock did miss him on that second to last drive. Maybe he was hesitant. Maybe he went through his progressions too quickly. Maybe he doesn't trust Brandon. I mean, you're not going to not throw a wide open deep bomb down the middle of the field because you're thinking, oh, is my number 1 receiver not going to catch it? But he was definitely forcing the ball to Jennings in a lot of situations. The other thing, guys, let's also recognize, it seems like, and I'd have to go back and watch the all 22, but Tre'Davious White drew Brandon Ayuk basically all game. Now, did they play some zone? Absolutely. But he was on Ayuk. He was not on Jennings. would have been maybe tougher, more contested catches. And I don't think Tre'Davious White is at the point of his career where he's a Deion Sanders or someone that he's not a Sauce Gardner that you're going to completely stay away from. But Jennings was open because Ayuk was getting a little bit more attention than Jennings was. And let's gloss over the fact that no one else on the team had over 2 catches. Jordan Mason and Eric Saubert had 2. So there was not this great spreading around of the ball. I think Chris Conley only had 1 catch. Ronnie Bell only had 1 catch, and that was the catch at the end, that whole lateral play that didn't work. Cowing, nothing. Nothing from Jake Tonjes, nothing from Isaac Guerendo, nothing. It was very, very top-heavy. Jennings, Ayuk, and basically nobody else. They ran the ball well. You can't say that the Rams really took the run away. I mean, Mason had his lowest yardage output of the year, still averaged about 4 yards a carry, 19 for 77. As a team, they ran 34 times for 137 yards. That's 41 from Brock, 77 from Mason, and the rest from Guerendo. I think Guerendo went 5 for 19, so nearly 4 yards a carry. And good for Guerendo getting on the field. Good for Shanahan to feel comfortable enough to have Isaac Guerendo on the field. And the offense started out strong. 14-0 in the first, did whatever they want offensively. First 2 possessions, bang, bang, touchdowns. Then punt, fumble at midfield at the end of the half, and that ends the half. So they potentially left 3 points on the table. They only had 4 possessions. They scored on half of them. The Niners had sustained drives that precluded them from maybe getting an extra possession in the first half or even in the second half. In the second half, they only had 4 possessions also. Second half was touchdown, field goal to make it 24-14, I think 11 and a half minutes to go in the game. Then you had your missed 55-yarder and then a punt. So if you're not going to count the very last possession, they had 4 possessions again, and they scored on half of them. The problem is what the Rams did in the second half. They scored on like 4 straight possessions. The Niners could not get a stop. We're going to get to defense. I gotta slow myself down. We're going to get to defense. Ronnie Bell, we talked about the 2 drops, and I know he's getting crucified for that drop with about a minute to go, close to the 20. Brock put it where he needed to. Bell jumps up for it, goes off his face mask. I guess he had just got his hands on it, got through his hands, off the face mask. Looked like something from, remember that movie from the late 80s, early 90s, Unnecessary Roughness, with Scott Bakula as the quarterback? Sinbad was in it, like that receiver, Featherstone. Same thing. He's dropped enough balls. Why is he? I can't believe Kyle trusts him at all. I can't believe Kyle trusts Ambry Thomas, who's on IR, but designated to return. These are players that it could be addition by subtraction or just subtraction. Goodbye. Ronnie Bell was on the field, obviously, because there's no Debo and no Ricky Pearsall. But how is that not a route run for Chris Conley instead? How does Jacob Cowing barely not get out? Did he get on the field at all? I have to go back and look at the snap counts. How does Jacob Cowing, how is he not the one that got that little pop pass, a little shovel to Ayuk around the left end in the first quarter? Why is it Ayuk getting that play and not someone that's faster and shiftier? And I don't want to say better in open space because he's a rookie, but if you're going to put someone out there as a punt returner, one, they could field punts well. And I know Cowing has had a fumble, so if you want to argue that, fine. But someone that is good in open space. Ayuk was never a punt returner for this team. Cowing is as a rookie. That means if you're doing anything from a jet sweep or a handoff or a bubble screen, tunnel screen, Cowing should be the one running it, right? Because they've identified his skill set as good with the ball in his hands, right? Good in open space. Can make people miss, is fast, is agile, quick twitch, but they're not utilizing it offensively. And Kyle's answer, well, no one asked the question maybe about it, but his thought process on it is, well, Cowing's getting closer. He's getting closer to doing some stuff on offense. How much closer do you need to be? You're missing two receivers in front of him. Ayuk is still working himself back into form. What is it about, I was going to say Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan's offense that it is so tough for a rookie to pick up? Are we saying other offenses? Josh McDaniels was the coordinator, Andy Reid, Minnesota, Cleveland, Dallas, Sean McVay. McVay played Puka Nacua as a rookie, right? And he had a monster season. Now, that might have been by necessity, given what the Rams receiver situation, might have been last year. But what is this friggin' hesitance that, you know what, dial your offense down a little bit. You're still going to have your creative shit that Kyle's going to want to do. I get it, but any other coach, or maybe that's too absolute, the vast majority of coaches out there, when you're down 2 receivers, would have given a rookie some playing time. I'm not saying he's not a starter, but some playing time, or that might have been the player that you throw a gadget play in there for. But the trust issues are ongoing, and they are a concern. Now, the running game, again, like I said, was fine. Mason's carries have gone down since week 1. I don't know if that's by design, like if he's feeling anything, from his body, but they leaned on Mason, I think, as well as they could have, and they got to 34 rushes as a team. That's where they need to be. 34 rushes and 29 passes or 30 passes for Brock. Brock had 8 incompletions, 6 of them were drops. 2 by Bell, 3 by Ayuk, and 1 by someone else. I don't remember. Nick Bosa was right at the end of the game. Like, you can't walk away from this. You can't take the Bill Belichick approach of, oh, it's on to New England. And actually, that's funny because it's New England and that was where the coach was. You got to feel this one. Like, there's, Warner last week said, we got too many smart players to be making mistakes like that. Well, they made some mistakes. They gave up a lot of big plays. And there was a lack of urgency to put this team away. Now, when you're up 14-0 and you only have 2 other possessions, one of which was a strip sack, would we have liked to see the Niners get up 17-0 or 21-0? Sure. Scoring on 4 of 8 possessions, at the end of the day, 24 is enough to beat the Rams. It should be enough to beat the Rams in their best iteration, and it's certainly enough to beat the Rams in yesterday's iteration of the players that they put out on the field. But the urgency, and I don't think they took their foot off the gas at some point, right? You got to give credit to the Rams, to McVay, to Chris Shula of at least stopping the bleeding, at least forcing a punt on the Niners' 3rd drive to give yourself the ball back to try to do something with it. And this is a nice segue for special teams. The fake punt happened when it was 14-0. Situational football. And this is so easy to say after the fact, but I've said it. You might not have heard it. I've said it to friends. I've said it to my son. We're watching the game. This Niners special team unit as a whole is not good. We know that. Punt returns are worse than not good. And punt blocks, other than the divisional game at Green Bay, I don't recall if they had one last year and I forgot about it. I apologize. I would be okay with this team playing punt safe for every frigging punt that's out there. They're not going to block a punt. They're not. They'll give up a block punt like we saw at Minnesota, but they're not going to block a punt. The best case scenario that happens, or worst case, is running into a kicker, roughing the kicker, and a first down that keeps things moving. So play it safe. And I don't know if punt safe actually helps with blocking downfield. I mean, you're going to have less people on the line, right, rushing the punter to no avail. Instead, maybe you can drop them back. And they did play punt safe later on. They learned. But 14-0, the team has no life. If the Rams were at their own 20, 25, or 30, they wouldn't have gone for it. It was near midfield, right? So situational football, down and distance matters. If it was 4th and 10 where they were, wouldn't have gone for it. 4th and 6, yes. Okay, I can understand it. But special teams coaching has been such an issue that, please, every single punt from now on, punt safe. Right? I'm not even joking about this, because given the punt personnel or scheme or whatever it is, it's just not good. Right. And I said facetiously that, could punt safe actually help on punt returns? Probably not, but figure out something that can minimize any sort of stupid play that your special teams players are going to make, because they make a bunch of them. We'll get back to Wisniewski. Missed field goal. Guys, it was a 55-yarder. That's a coin flip, right? 55-yarder is not a guarantee. How much do you want to kill Moody? He was really good in the Super Bowl. The extra point got blocked. He had multiple 50-yarders. He was perfect coming into this game and was perfect through this game until that point. 55-yarder, you can't kill him too much. Did I have a ton of confidence when he trotted out there for the 55-yarder? No. And maybe that is damning. But you can argue, why not pin the Rams deep? Why not, do you have a better chance of getting a stop? And the Rams are going to be playing 4 downs the rest of the way. Actually, maybe not, given how quickly they could have gone, maybe 3 and out. Do you pin him deep? Do you pin him inside the 15, inside the 10? Ask your defense to get a stop? Is that a better percentage chance than a 55-yard field goal? I don't know. Just the risk reward is, you're up 10, game's probably over. The risk is you're giving them the ball at their own 45-yard line. What about Juice getting called for a hold on was it a first or second down run from the Rams 42? Negated a 5-yard gain by Isaac Orendo. Pushed it back to 1st and 20. Then I think on 2nd and 15, there was an out pass to the left to Jennings. Makes it 3rd and 8. Goes out of bounds. The play, it was an out, so it was running out of bounds anyway, but stops the clock with 3:09 left. Would that have guaranteed anything? No. But stopping the clock in a situation where the other team needs the clock anyway, right? I keep telling my son, this isn't baseball. It's not tennis, and it's not golf. Untimed sports. When the clock is gone, the game is over. So if you can kill clock, waste clock, whatever, you're making it much more difficult, that much more difficult for a team to come back by 1 score, 2 scores, whatever it may be. Then you have the missed field goal, and then the Niners get the ball back, but decide Wisniewski punts it. Why he doesn't punt it out of bounds, I don't know. This is, to me, reminiscent of how long ago was that Giants game where Tom Coughlin was screaming at the punter to punt it out of bounds. It was around Christmas time. I remember that. Punts it to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson returns it with no time left, and the Eagles beat the Giants. Wasn't that bad, but 38, they fielded at the 12. So he did a good job of pinning it inside the 20. I'd rather have you kick it out of bounds at the 20 or 25. Just shank the shit out of it than giving someone a chance to return because you knew what was going to happen. This is a bad special teams unit. Can someone start coaching? And maybe it's not really as imperative now with kickoff returns because there's really no kickoff returns, but with punt returns, when you're the gunner running down there, can at some point you slow the fuck down before you get to the player? Because everybody, it's who overruns the coverage, who's running so goddamn fast that all it needs is the punt returner to catch the ball, plant one way and go the other, and the defender goes running by. Can we play a little under control? I know football is fast and violent and instinctual, but how about playing a little bit more under control? And this, doesn't go for just the Niners, really any punt return team, but I don't give a shit about other teams. I'm just talking about the Niners here. And then they wind up going, the big pass to Tutu Atwell, who gets behind Ward inside the 5-yard line. So they went for like the kill shot right away. Good for them. And bad for Travarius Ward, who was nicked up going into the game. And he was covering their fastest player. But to have, I think it might have been, was it Huff who was over the top that was late getting over, but Ward got beat anyway, who was playing the game with a hamstring and a knee injury. So it's not like he was 100%, but I think 100% Ward gets run by Tutu Atwell anyway. So I don't know how much that would have mattered. But let's shift to the defense. This is obviously where the lion's share of the blame is going to be, right? Would we go 60% defense, 30% special teams, 10% offense? Just because the offense just needed one more drive to put up points, and it would have ended the game. And that drive could have been Moody's field goal or whatever, but it's not like they scored on every drive. So the offense, they could have done more, right? A perfect game would have been scoring on every drive, touchdowns preferably, not field goals. Here's why the defense is so under fire and disgusting right now for me. San Francisco was missing one starter. It's Greenlaw. They got Hufanga back. I know Bosa was questionable with a rib injury. After the game, he said it was an oblique, but he played through it. Otherwise, they had everybody. And they were going up against a Rams offense, which was basically it was basically an offense that they would trot out there during preseason games when they play nobody. But they did have Stafford and Kyren Williams. Who did they not have? Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, and 3 starting offensive linemen. 6 starters not there. And the Niners defense, look, the Rams were held under 300 total yards, right? But it should have been under 250. It should have been less than what it was. And they certainly did not get any stops when they needed to late in the game. 4 straight scores in the second half for Los Angeles. So I'm going to ask the question, through 3 weeks of the season, what does the 49ers defense do well? What does it do well? Is it pass defense? Is it run defense? Is it pressure on the quarterback? I'm not even asking what does it do, rank order them. What does it do better than the other 2 or 3? It's just, what does it do well? And the answer to that is nothing. The Niners defense right now does nothing well. And even though it's only through 3 games, it shows through the stats. Overall, they're 16th in the league, middle of the pack. Passing, they're 20th, bottom 3rd. Rush defense, they're 10th. I don't know how excited we have to get about that, because it just doesn't seem like they're really able to stop the ball when they need to. And they're allowing 104 yards a game. And points allowed, they are 23rd, giving up 23 points a game. This defense should be averaging probably 6 or 7 points under that. Had 3 sacks against Stafford. One was where they did collapse the pocket. Bosa, coming off of one of the ends, stepped up, was sacked. One was Hargrave beating a double team, or at least beating the center. Nice to see that. Got up in Stafford's grill for a sack. And one was Sam Okinawa. Hopefully I said that correctly. Coming unblocked for a sack. So how much credit do you really want to take on that? Whether it was a scheme thing by Sorensen, I highly doubt. It was an offensive line bust by the Rams. 3 sacks, but no closers. Overall, played the run not terribly. Gave up 98 total rushing yards. It was a 3.8 average. And Kyren Williams went 24 for 89, but did score multiple touchdowns. Good for me. I have him in fantasy. But those touchdowns also were walk-ins. Uncontested. One where he somersault leapt over Talanoa Hufanga, and the others, he didn't get touched until he was in the end zone. And granted, it's not like they were tremendously long runs. They were from around the 5 or inside the 5. But still, 3rd down defense, which I had a stat last podcast. I don't have it with me now, but how bad their 3rd and 7 or more defense is. By far the worst in the NFL. I don't have that specific stat today. But the Rams converted on 6 of 13 third downs, 46%, well above league average and super unacceptable. Do we want to say the defense got tired? Do we want to say it's play calling? Do we want to say it's personnel? Do we want to say it's scheme? They started strong, right? Then there's got to be some sort of correlation to how they start versus mid-game versus how they finish. But they held Stafford without a completion through the first quarter. I think we saw the stat where the Rams had, -9 passing yards in the first quarter, maybe sometime early in the second quarter. But then after that, here come the big plays. 48-yard pass interference on Isaac Yiadom on, I think it was Tutu Atwell again. Sets up the Rams' second touchdown. 32-yard reception, setting up the field goal to make it 24-17. That was on Lenore. The 50-yard pass to Atwell to set up the tying touchdown. That was on Charvarius Ward. And then at the very end of the game, the last Ram drive, a 25-yard pass interference penalty on Devondre Campbell, trying to cover, I believe, tight end Colby Parkinson. That sets up the game-winning field goal. In Campbell's defense, there were 3 total flags on the play. So if it wasn't called on him, there would have been something else. It just wouldn't have been a 25-yard penalty, probably a 5-yard holding or illegal contact, whatever it may have been. So the defense faded. The defense gave up big plays, legit big plays. The defense gave up big penalties against, again, an offense missing their top 2 Pro Bowl receivers and a very good tight end and 3 starters on the offensive line. And I know they were in 12 personnel all game, right? One running back, multiple tight ends, 3 receivers. Fine. I don't know how much those tight ends were helping, chipping Bosa or Floyd or helping with any sort of pass protection. But the Niners D-line, unlike the Cardinals D-line last week, did not manhandle the Rams O-line. Cards had 5 or 6 sacks. Niners had 3. 3 sacks, but the pressures throughout the game weren't there. They just weren't there. Stafford is comfortable. And when you make, a top quarterback in the conference comfortable, regardless of who is playing receiver, and there were some miscommunications early on. You saw like Stafford talking to his receiver, like you got to take it back out or in or whatever it may be. At some point, if you're not getting pressure, Stafford is going to find holes in this defense, holes in this type of zone. And he did. He totally understands what the Niners are doing because they've been doing the same thing since he's been there. It's the same defense regardless of who the coordinator is. And that the issue? Is this scheme at some point, I'm not the whole issue. Let's not go nuts, but part of the issue. Because when you look at adjustments between now and next week facing the Patriots, what we've seen the first 3 weeks of the season is predominantly rushing 4 and dropping 7 is not working. This line is not nearly as good as people think it is. One thing I'll add to that is where people are coming out saying, oh, the Niners have no depth on their D-line, which my response is, guys, they have 3 starters at defensive end. Bosa, Floyd, and Yator. 3 starters at defensive tackle. Hargrave, Collins, and Elliott. Then you have Gibbons at D tackle and Robert Beal at DN. Give me a team that's got 4 starting caliber players or 4 former starters at D end or D tackle. So I don't want to hear the depth issue. If we're worried that they don't have a 9th or 10th defensive lineman on the roster, does it matter? They wouldn't be active anyway. They can call up an Alex Barrett or T.Y. McGill or Evan Anderson if they needed a little bit more beef or someone was nicked up after this game. They need someone on the line for the Patriot game. They have those players on the practice squad. They're not going anywhere. But have players, much like seeing, a pitcher the second or third time around around the lineup, you get to see the tendencies a little bit more. The more teams are playing the Niners, the more teams that are seeing the scheme and watching tape and watching film, are they understanding the defense more and are able to break it? Are they able to block the wide 9 more? Are they able to run down the throat of the wide 9? And I know D linemen they're stunting. They're just not rushing straight up and keeping gaping holes in the offense for running backs to run through. But the players, while different, are still quality, still high quality players. And maybe it's Nick Sorensen learning on the job, right? He doesn't disguise his blitz as well. When he blitzes 6.5% of the time, by far the lowest in the league. But does Staley need to have a bigger hand in defensive play calling moving forward, right? If Kyle Shanahan was comfortable enough, and I think it was mid-season, that he called Wilkes down from the box to be on the field more. And that seemed to help initially. And then that honeymoon period faded, and the Niners defense was a middle of the pack unit basically for the rest of the year. Do they potentially see the season slipping away and say, okay, listen, this is why we brought Brandon Staley in. He's assistant head coach, defensive consultant, or whatever his official title is. Let's get him more involved. You don't have to make it even public, right? But is he on the field more with Staley? Is he and I'm sure he's game planning already. I mean, what else is he doing? I'm sure he's game planning with Staley and Shanahan on the defensive side of the ball. Does he take that over more? The complete slap on the wrist coup d'etat would be if play calling duties transfer over to Staley completely. I don't know how bad it would have to get for Kyle to consider that, but I think Fred Warner said this in his interview yesterday, or maybe someone else on Sports Talk. It's early, but it's still late. Like it's early in the season, but you're 1-2. You don't want to fall into a deeper hole just because maybe Nick Sorensen isn't the right play caller. And on top of that, maybe they need to adjust the scheme a little bit to put their Pro Bowl and all pro defensive players in a better position to win their matchups and get heat on the quarterback. Best secondary since Kyle's been here. Didn't show it. Multiple penalties, multiple big plays. Didn't play man a whole lot. Burned when they did. Or, the cover 2, cover 3 safeties didn't get over. And, let's, everyone back off defense for a second. I mean, we talked about defense a lot. I'm sure you're talking about defense with your friends or listen to other people talk about defense. Special teams has been bad since Kyle's got here. What's the fix? I mean, are you firing Brian Schneider? Like, what is the actual fix? How responsible is the special teams coach for Moody missing a kick? His first miss of the year. If he missed earlier in the game and the Niners won the game, no one would have mattered. It's obviously when you miss and the consequences of that miss, how late they could have sealed the game. But again, a 55-yarder. Wishnowski has been a better than average punter. Nothing spectacular. But what about the down in distance and situational football of potentially running a punt save, of potentially kicking the ball out of bounds? Just let's not even worry about a return. Or if you can blast it through the end zone, blast it through the end zone. But they did neither. It was a low liner to the 12, return for 38 yards. I don't know what the fix is. And of course, return coverage. I don't know what the fix is here, right? We can do, Monday morning quarterbacking, Monday morning special teamsing as much as we want. It's not going to matter because I don't think Kyle is going to make any sort of change. I don't think he's stubborn. Well, he's stubborn. He is, I think, loyal until the point where, you totally shake or break his confidence. And I don't know if Ronnie Bell has done that yet. I'm assuming Ronnie Bell is going to be on the team for the New England game, but you can call up, is it Terrence Marshall? Whoever they got from the Panthers. You could bring up Trent Taylor. Tay Martin, I was looking to see if he was available on the practice squad. He's on the Titans practice squad. You can sign him if you want and drop. Or do you fight it out with Ronnie Bell on the roster and wait that one more week if Pearsall can return? But I wouldn't play Ronnie Bell at all next week, barring massive injuries at receiver if he's on the roster. Like, he's got to sit. Now, slow starts are common and widely publicized by the Bengals, but the Niners start slow too. Last 3 years, 3-5, 4-4, and 5-3. Now, can they get to 3-2? Yeah. New England, and we're going to preview that on Thursday, offensively should not be able to hurt them, although big, strong running back in Ramondre Stevenson, they are committed to running the ball. They don't have weapons on the outside, but it may not matter depending on what Sorensen dials up or dials down or dials sideways, whatever it may be. Jacoby Brissett, Drake May, whoever the quarterback is, might throw for, 225, 250 against this defense and keep it ugly and keep it uncomfortable again. But then they got Arizona, 2 games at home, go to Seattle. at home for KC, at home for Dallas, then a bye. So that's 5 games, and they're 1-2. Can they get to 4-4? Can they get to 5-3? 5-3 would be, I think, at this point, a wild blessing at the bye. That if they could beat everybody but, say, the Chiefs, that would be fantastic. This game hurt so much because it was a conference loss and a division loss, and the team that you lost to was trash. They were a JV team. Hats off to the players and the coaches for fighting and finding a way. But they were severely the lesser team. Severely. The Niners are home for 4 of their next 5. I don't, as of today, September 23rd, I don't envision all that much changing from how they're going about doing business. But what this past Sunday showed us, Giants go to Cleveland and beat the Browns. Maybe not a tremendous upset, but the Giants are terrible. Browns have really good defense. Browns at home. Giants get the win. Carolina, after sitting Bryce Young, it's obviously an upgrade with Andy Dalton, goes to Las Vegas and totally stomps the Raiders. And the Rams, down 14-0, undermanned to every single degree at almost every position on their roster, comes back and beats a 49er team that should have beaten them by probably 17 or more. Any given Sunday, right? You don't take anybody lightly. And if they did take the Rams lightly, then that's a big, when they got up 14-0, then that's a problem that they need to have a players only meeting, or coaches need to talk to them about. When we get up by 2 scores, let's push it to 3 scores. Doesn't mean you're going for it on 4th down or anything crazy, but let's push it. Let's not settle. And let's keep getting stops so we can have our offense come on the field and give them the opportunity to push it to 3 scores. Maybe let's get wild. Let's push it to 4 scores. But they have a team coming up in New England that really shouldn't hurt them offensively. But we thought the same thing about the Rams. And Arizona could be all sorts of problems because the Niners, historically, with this front 4, have had issues with quarterbacks who are mobile. And then Seattle, haven't watched many of their 3 games. I don't know how good they are or not, but they're playing better football than the Niners are right now, and it's in Seattle. I'm probably going to be taking Seattle. Unless the Niners look really good these next 2 games, I'm probably picking Seattle. And then the Chiefs and the Cowboys. We'll see. We'll get there. This is just a reaction from losing at Levi South, a complete lethargic letdown. And the Niners are now 1-2 and last in the NFC West. I want to thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to make us part of your listening routine. Really tough game, guys. Thank God there's 14 more of them, but hopefully the majority of those 14 don't look like this one. 24 points for an historic Niner D, or the average Niner D from the past 5 years, should be enough to win that game handily. And if that's not going to be the case, then Kyle's going to have to do something defensively and decide not to go down with the ship. The mentality should not be, all right, I guess we're going to have to win shootouts. This is an offense that could put up 30 points any given week, but it can't 24, 27 plus any given week. But they can't be looking over their shoulder thinking that they have to keep scoring because the defense isn't holding their own. We'll see. Next podcast is Thursday. Enjoy, if you're listening today, the doubleheader on Monday Night Football. I forget who the 4 teams are playing, but we do know it's just because of money, and they're putting them on overlapping times. Remember they used to do it? They'd kick off the season. There was a 7 o'clock game Eastern and then a 10 o'clock. And I understand not that many people are watching the 10 o'clock game Eastern, and there's more people living on the East Coast than West Coast. That affected ratings. But 2 Monday night games, make no mistake about it, is solely for the capitalist bottom line of Roger Goodell and the NFL. I'm sure I'll be flipping and watching both at times. But when we speak again on Thursday, looking ahead to Niners at New England, whatever you guys are doing between now and then, stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.